Billionaire runs into his ex-wife and is stunned by triplets who look just like him. Michael Anderson adjusted his tie as he walked through the lobby of the Plaza Royale Hotel, where he had scheduled a meeting with Chinese investors. His mind was focused on the numbers for his presentation when something made him stop dead in his tracks. That's when he saw Jennifer. His ex-wife was there, just a few feet away, trying discreetly to hide behind a marble column. But it wasn't her that had frozen the businessman. It was the three little girls beside her, dressed in identical beige dresses, who had the same piercing blue eyes he saw in the mirror every day. "Mommy, why are we running?" one of the girls asked, tugging at the hem of Jennifer's black dress. "Shh, Emily, let's go quickly," Jennifer whispered, pulling the three children toward the exit. Michael felt his heart race uncontrollably. Those little faces, those eyes, that unmistakable smile one of them flashed at that moment. It was like looking at himself as a child. His legs felt like lead. "Jennifer!" he shouted before he could stop himself. The woman froze mid-step, as if she'd been shot. Slowly she turned, and Michael could see the panic written across the face he had once loved so much. "Mommy, who is that man?" another of the girls asked, pointing straight at Michael. "No one important, Madison. Let's go," Jennifer said, but her voice trembled. Then the third girl looked directly at Michael. Her eyes widened, and a huge smile spread across her angelic face. "Daddy!" Olivia shrieked, letting go of her mother's hand and running toward Michael. The entire lobby froze. Guests, staff, everyone stared in shock at the scene unfolding in the middle of New York City's most elegant hotel. Michael instinctively knelt as the little girl threw herself into his arms. The scent of baby shampoo, the giggle, those eyes identical to his. There was no denying it. "Olivia, no!" Jennifer cried, rushing after her daughter. "You came back from your trip, Daddy. Mommy said you'd be gone a long time, but you're back," Olivia said, clinging to Michael's neck. "Trip?" Michael repeated, confused, looking at Jennifer, who had reached them. The other two girls inched closer, timidly. Emily hid half her face behind her mother's leg, while Madison studied Michael with curiosity. "Michael, I can explain," Jennifer began, but her voice faltered. "Explain." Michael stood slowly, still holding Olivia in his arms. "Explain why I have 6-year-old triplets I never knew existed?" Onlookers began gathering around them. Michael realized they were drawing too much attention. "Let's go somewhere more private," he said, gesturing to a quieter corner of the lobby. "No, Michael, we need to leave," Jennifer said, reaching for Olivia. "I don't want to leave Daddy's arms," Olivia grumbled, clinging tighter to Michael's neck. "Daddy, did you bring presents?" Madison asked, stepping closer. "Madison, don't talk to strangers," Jennifer scolded. "But Mommy said he's our daddy," Emily said, peeking out from behind her mother's leg. Michael felt a mix of anger, confusion, and an overwhelming, instant love for these three little girls who looked just like him. 6 years, Jennifer. 6 years you hid from me that I had daughters," Michael said, his voice low but thick with emotion. "Michael, it's not like that. I tried..." "Tried what?" "To tell me you were pregnant when you signed the divorce papers without even looking back." "You don't understand? Then explain it to me now." Jennifer looked around. Several people were still discreetly watching them. She knew she had no choice. "Fine. But not here. The girls don't need to hear this." Michael looked at the three little girls. Olivia was still in his arms, playing with his tie. Madison had moved closer and was touching his free hand, while Emily watched everything with wide, curious eyes. "There's a meeting room reserved on the 10th floor. We can talk there," Michael said. "The girls stay with me," Jennifer said firmly. "Of course, they're my daughters too, Jennifer, even if I just found out 5 minutes ago." On the way to the elevator, Michael couldn't stop looking at the girls. Every gesture, every facial expression, it was like seeing female versions of himself. Olivia wouldn't let go of his hand, chattering about cartoons and her school. Madison walked on his other side, asking questions about his work. Emily stayed closer to her mother but watched Michael with growing interest. "Daddy, do you live in a hotel?" Olivia asked as they stepped into the elevator. "No, sweetheart, I just work here sometimes," Michael replied automatically. surprised at how easily the word sweetheart came out. Sweetheart, Jennifer repeated, giving him an unreadable look. It's natural, isn't it? He defended. When they reached the meeting room, Michael asked for juice and cookies to be brought for the girls. They sat on the sofa, whispering to each other and glancing between him and their mother. Now talk, Jennifer. How could you do this to me? Jennifer took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly as she began to speak. When I found out I was pregnant, we already had the divorce papers ready. You were obsessed with that company merger, working 18-hour days. We barely spoke for months. That doesn't justify hiding a triplet pregnancy from me, Jennifer. I tried to tell you, she burst out. I went to your office 3 times. The first time your secretary Karen said you were in a meeting and couldn't see me. The second time she said you'd made it clear you didn't want to talk to me about anything except the divorce. I never told Karen that. The third time, I got past Karen and into your office. You were on the phone with the lawyers, yelling about contract clauses. When I tried to interrupt, you looked at me with such contempt and told me to handle everything with the lawyers, that you didn't have time for personal drama. Michael vaguely remembered that afternoon. The merger had been hanging by a thread, and he'd lost patience with everything and everyone. You should have insisted anyway. Insisted? Jennifer laughed bitterly. Michael, you had become a stranger. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought maybe it could bring us back together, but then your mother showed up at my house. My mother? Mrs. Margaret came by the day after my 3rd attempt to talk to you. She knew about the pregnancy. How did she know? Karen had told her. Michael felt his blood run cold. Karen, his secretary of over 10 years, someone he trusted completely. What did my mother say? She said if I told you about the pregnancy, she'd do everything to prove I was a gold digger trying to take advantage of your wealth. She said she had contacts in the press and would make my life a living hell. That you'd never believe me because I was just trying to save the marriage with a fake pregnancy. Fake? Jennifer, any DNA test would prove... I was only 6 weeks along at the time, Michael, and your mother said more. She said that if I disappeared from your life and never looked for you again, she would make sure I had the means to raise the children decently. What kind of means? A paid-off house in Brooklyn, a monthly allowance until the girls turned 18, and health insurance, all in exchange for my silence. Michael sat heavily in the chair. It all sounded exactly like something his mother would do. And you accepted. I accepted because I was alone, pregnant with triplets, with no job and no family. My parents had just died in that accident, remember? I had no one left in the world, Michael. The girls had stopped whispering and were watching their parents' conversation intently, even if they didn't fully understand what was happening. And how did you explain me to them? I said Daddy had traveled far away for work, but would come back one day. For 6 years. I didn't know what to do, Michael. As they grew older and started asking more questions, I couldn't tell them the truth. Olivia got up from the couch and walked over to Michael. Daddy, you're not going to travel again, are you? Michael felt his heart break. He crouched down to her level. No, sweetheart. Daddy isn't going away anymore. Promise? I promise. Emily and Madison also came closer, and soon Michael found himself surrounded by all 3 girls, each vying for his attention. Daddy, are you going to live with us now? Madison asked. Michael looked at Jennifer. She avoided his gaze. Daddy and Mommy need to talk about that, sweetheart. But I want you to live with us, Emily said, speaking for the first time since meeting him. I want that too, Emily. More than anything in the world. Jennifer stood abruptly. Girls, let's go. Daddy has to work. No, all 3 shouted in unison. Jennifer, wait. We can't just leave it like this. They're my daughters too. So what? For 6 years, you lived just fine without knowing they existed. Because you hid them from me. How do you expect me to react, Jennifer? Pretend everything's fine? I expect you to understand our life was working perfectly fine before today. Working? Look at them, Jennifer. They want a father. They deserve a father. They deserve a present father, Michael, not a workaholic who promises the world and then disappears when the next big meeting comes up. I'm not the same person I was 6 years ago. Prove it. How? Choose. your obsession with work or your daughters. But know this, if you choose them, it has to be for real. No middle ground, no just one more important meeting, no one more deal and then I'll stop. You either choose to be their father completely or you don't. Michael looked at the three girls watching him with those blue eyes identical to his. 6 years of their lives lost. First steps, first words, first days of school, birthdays, feverish nights, nightmares, all gone. I choose them, he said without hesitation. Just like that? Jennifer, I just found out I have 3 daughters. Nothing in the world is more important than them now. What about your business empire? It can be managed by others. My daughters can only be raised by me. Jennifer studied him for a long moment. There was something different about Michael, she had to admit. Something she hadn't seen in years. Fine, but we take it slow. You can visit them, spend some weekends with them. We'll see how you all adjust. Visits? Jennifer, they're my daughters. They're mine too. And for 6 years, they were mine alone. You can't just show up and expect to be their father overnight. Daddy, are you coming to my birthday? Olivia asked. It's next month. Of course I am, sweetheart. When is it? August 15th. We all 3 have the same birthday because we're triplets, explained Madison, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. And how old will you be turning? 7! The 3 of them shouted together. Michael smiled. 7 years old. His life had completely changed in 20 minutes. Can I throw you a birthday party? The girls exchanged glances and grinned. With a clown? Asked Emily. With everything you want. Michael, Jennifer interrupted him. No exaggerations. They have a simple, normal life. I don't want you showing up making wild promises and filling their heads with luxuries. They're heirs to a fortune, Jennifer. I want to give them everything they deserve. They deserve a present father. The rest is secondary. Before Michael could respond, his phone rang. It was Karen. Mr. Anderson, the Chinese have arrived. They're waiting in the 8th floor conference room. Michael looked at the phone, then at his daughters. Cancel the meeting. Excuse me, sir? You heard me. Cancel the meeting. Reschedule for next week. But, sir, this meeting... Michael hung up. Done, cancelled. Jennifer stared at him, surprised. Was it important? Not more important than this. Olivia climbed onto Michael's lap. Daddy, do you want to see our drawings? I draw really well. Of course I do. They're at home, said Madison. Can you come with us? Michael looked at Jennifer, waiting for an answer. Not today, another time. When? Saturday. You can have lunch with us on Saturday. And Sunday? Let's take it slow, Michael. The following Saturday, Michael was at Jennifer's door in Brooklyn right at noon. He'd spent the whole week thinking about the girls, cancelling meetings, and delegating responsibilities. The house was simple but cozy. 2 bedrooms, a small living room, a kitchen, and a tiny backyard. A far cry from the mansion he lived in on the Upper East Side. Daddy, the 3 shouted as they opened the door. Hi, my princesses. Come see our room, said Olivia, pulling his hand. The girls' room was small, with a bunk bed and a single bed. The walls were covered in children's drawings, school photos, and toys scattered on the floor. All 3 of you sleep in the same room. We like it, said Madison. At night, we talk. And when one has a nightmare, the others comfort her, Emily added. Michael's heart ached. His daughters had grown up taking care of each other, forming bonds he'd missed. During lunch, the girls talked about school, their teachers, and friends. Michael listened to every word as if it were the most important story in the world. Daddy, at school there's a boy who said I was lying because my dad was away for so long, said Madison. What did you say? I told him my dad had the most important job in the world, so it took a long time for him to come back. Michael swallowed the lump in his throat. And do you miss Daddy? All the time, said Olivia. Especially when the other girls at school talk about their dads. And when we get sick, said Emily, Mom has to handle everything alone. Michael looked at Jennifer. She was stirring her food, avoiding his gaze. Mom, can I tell Daddy about the time I broke my arm? Asked Madison. Go ahead. It was at the school playground. I fell off the slide and broke my arm. Mom had to drop everything at work and rush to the hospital. She cried a lot. You cried? Michael asked Jennifer. I cried from desperation. It was terrible dealing with it alone. Why didn't you reach out to me? Michael, in my mind, you didn't exist in their lives. Your mother made it very clear you wanted nothing to do with us. My mother said that, among other things. After lunch, Michael played with the girls in the backyard. They showed him the dollhouse they had built with cardboard boxes, the garden they tended, and the stray cats they fed. Daddy, do you have any pets? Asked Olivia. No, I never had time to take care of pets. But do you have time now? Now I have time for everything you want. When it was time to leave, the three of them clung to him. Will you come back tomorrow? Asked Emily. If Mommy lets me. Mommy, can he? Begged Madison. Girls, Daddy has to work. But it's Sunday. No one works on Sunday, said Olivia. Can I come on Sunday too? Michael asked Jennifer. You can. Michael left that Saturday feeling whole in a way he hadn't experienced in years. On Sunday, he arrived with simple gifts, coloring books, crayons, and puzzles. Why did you bring presents? Asked Jennifer. Because I want to spoil my daughters. Michael, I told you not to overdo it. They're coloring books, Jennifer, not a pony. Over the next few weeks, Michael established a routine. Weekends with the girls, some afternoons during the week when he left work early. He had delegated much of his responsibilities to his partners and directors, something he never imagined he'd do. His mother called constantly, complaining about his new priorities, but he simply ignored her. Michael, you've lost your mind, she said during an unannounced visit to his office. You're throwing your career away over some kids. My daughters, Mom, not some kids. How can you even be sure they're yours? Just look at them. Look. And if you want, I can get a DNA test. That woman is a gold digger, Michael. She showed up now because she found out your financial situation improved even more. She hasn't asked me for anything, Mom. Not a penny. Not yet. And even if she did, they're my daughters. I have an obligation to support them. Michael, you're being manipulated. Mom, I want you to meet your granddaughters. Mrs. Margaret looked at him as if he'd suggested something absurd. I don't have granddaughters. Yes, you do, 3, and they're beautiful, smart, and loving. I don't want to meet them. Then you'll miss the chance to have a real family. It was on a Thursday, 3 weeks after the reunion, that Michael received a call that would change everything again. Michael! It was Jennifer, her voice choked with tears. What's wrong? What happened? It's Emily. She fainted at school. I'm at the hospital. Michael dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. When he arrived, he found Jennifer frantic in the waiting room, with Olivia and Madison crying beside her. What did the doctors say? They're running tests. She fainted during gym class and didn't wake up properly. She's very pale, very weak. Where is she? Room 312, but only one person can go in at a time. Michael ran upstairs. When he saw Emily in that bed, so small and fragile, his world crumbled. She was awake, but frighteningly pale. Hi, Daddy, she said weakly. Hi, Princess, how are you feeling? Tired, so tired. The doctors will figure out what's wrong and make you better, okay? Daddy, will I have to stay in the hospital? I don't know, sweetheart, but if you do, Daddy will stay here with you. Promise? I promise. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 2 hours later, the doctor called Michael and Jennifer for a private conversation. The tests show Emily has severe anemia. We need to run more tests to identify the cause, but there's a possibility it could be something more serious. More serious like what? Asked Jennifer, holding Michael's hand. It could be a bone marrow issue. We'll do a biopsy tomorrow to be sure. And if it is? Asked Michael. Depending on the diagnosis, she might need a bone marrow transplant. Jennifer started to cry. Michael hugged her, feeling his own tears well up. What are the chances of finding a compatible donor? Among immediate family, the odds are higher. The two of you, her sisters, grandparents, everyone would need to be tested. That night, Emily was admitted. Michael kept his promise and didn't leave the hospital. Jennifer stayed too, and they took turns by the girl's bedside. Olivia and Madison stayed at a neighbor's house, but they cried so much that Jennifer ended up bringing them to the hospital the next day. "Daddy, is Emily going to be okay?" asked Olivia, clinging to Michael's neck. "We'll do everything we can to make her better, sweetheart." "But what if she doesn't get better?" Michael looked at Madison, who had asked the question everyone feared. "She will, Madison. Daddy will make sure she gets better." The biopsy results came 2 days later. Severe aplastic anemia. Emily would need a bone marrow transplant urgently. "I want to do the compatibility test now," Michael told the doctor. "Me too," said Jennifer. "What about the other girls?" "Them too." "Mr. Anderson, is there anyone else in the family who could be tested?" Michael thought of his mother, of his brother Richard, who lived in Chicago and barely spoke to him. "My mother and my brother." It would be important for everyone to be tested. That afternoon, Michael called Richard. "Michael? What a surprise, it's been so long." "Richard, I need your help." He told the whole story, reconnecting with Jennifer, the triplets, Emily's illness. "Wait, you have 3 6-year-old daughters and never told me." "I found out a month ago, Richard." "What do you mean you found out?" Michael explained the whole situation. Richard was silent for a long time. "And now you want me to come to New York to get tested as a donor." "She's your niece, Richard." "A niece I've never met." "Because you never wanted to really know me either." "Michael, we haven't spoken in 2 years." "And whose fault is that? Yours for being hurt because Dad left the company to me, or mine because I accepted it?" "Let's not argue about this now." "We're not arguing. I'm asking for your help to save my daughter." "I need to think." "Richard, she's 6. There's no time to think." "Fine. I'll come tomorrow." When Michael told his mother, her reaction was completely different. "I won't take any test." "Mom, she's your granddaughter." "I don't have granddaughters. How can you be so cruel? Cruel is you throwing your life away over some children who appeared out of nowhere." "They didn't appear out of nowhere. You're the one who made Jennifer disappear." "I protected you from a gold digger. You kept me from knowing my daughters." "Michael, you were doing just fine without them. Focused on work, making money, building an empire." "An empty empire, Mom. No family, no real purpose." "The purpose is to carry on the Anderson family legacy. The legacy lives on through my daughters. Through the daughters of some poor teacher." "Michael, you could have married any heiress, had children with good genes, good upbringing." "Mom, stop, you're talking about my daughters." "I won't take the test, and if you insist on this madness, consider our relationship over." Michael looked at the woman who raised him and saw a stranger. Cold, calculating, without a shred of grandmotherly love. "Then it's over." He left his mother's house and went straight back to the hospital. Emily had gotten worse during the day and the doctors were worried. "Daddy?" Emily called when he entered the room. "Hi, Princess." "I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Of not getting better." Michael sat on the edge of the bed and took her small hand. "Emily, Daddy will do everything to make you better. Everything." "Do you promise?" "I promise." Olivia and Madison were sleeping in armchairs by the bed. Jennifer was curled up in a chair in the corner, her eyes red from crying. "How were your tests?" she asked. "They're not back yet." "And yours?" "Not yet either." "Jennifer, what if none of us are a match?" "Don't say that." "But what if we're not?" "We will be. We have to be." The next morning, Richard arrived at the hospital. It had been 3 years since the brothers had seen each other in person. "Where are they?" Richard asked as soon as he saw Michael. "In the room. Do you want to meet them?" "Of course." When they entered the room, Emily was awake, playing with a puzzle Michael had brought. Olivia and Madison were on the floor, coloring. "Girls, this is Uncle Richard, Daddy's brother." The 3 of them looked at Richard curiously. "Hi," Emily said from the bed. "Hi, Emily. You look just like your dad when he was little." "Really?" "Just like him. He had those same blue eyes and was always sick." Daddy was sick? He was always in the hospital. Your grandmother would spend the whole day worried. Michael looked at his brother, surprised. He didn't remember being sick as a child. And you two look just like him too, Richard said to Olivia and Madison. Everyone says that, Madison replied. That's because you're really Daddy's girls. That afternoon, while Richard was getting tested, Michael took the chance to talk to him. Why did you say I was always sick as a kid? I don't remember that. Because you don't remember. You were always unconscious with fever. Mom was desperate, running from doctor to doctor. What kind of illness? Anemia, just like Emily. Michael felt his blood run cold. What do you mean, just like Emily? Bone marrow problem. You almost needed a transplant, but in the end, your marrow recovered on its own. Why did no one ever tell me? Mom wouldn't allow it. She said you didn't need to carry that trauma. Richard, does that mean Emily could have inherited this from me? Maybe. These things can be genetic sometimes. Michael was overwhelmed with guilt. If Emily was sick because of his genetic inheritance, it was all his fault. That night, the test results came in. Michael wasn't a match. Jennifer wasn't either. Olivia and Madison weren't either. What about your brother? The doctor asked. His results aren't back yet. Let's hope he's a match. Otherwise, we'll have to search the national donor list, and that could take time. How long does Emily have? A few weeks, 2 months at most? Michael felt his world collapse. 2 weeks later, Richard got his result. A match. Richard, you saved my daughter, Michael said, hugging his brother. Our daughter, Michael. She's my niece. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. Emily was weaker but excited, knowing she'd get better. Uncle Richard, after the surgery, will I be able to play again? She asked. You'll be able to play, run, do everything a girl your age does. And will you be okay? I'll be just fine. I'm only giving you a little bit of my marrow. Thank you, Uncle. For what? For saving me. Richard was moved. During those weeks in the hospital, he'd grown to love his nieces. Emily, I'm the one who should thank you. For what? For giving me a reason to make up with your dad. Michael was in the hallway when he overheard this. He realized that all those years, he'd lost not just his daughters, but also his brother. On the day of the surgery, the whole family was at the hospital. Michael, Jennifer, Olivia, Madison, and even some of Jennifer's co-workers who had become like extended family to the girls. The surgery took 4 hours. Richard went first, and then Emily received his bone marrow. Everything went well, the doctor said when he came out of the operating room. Now we wait for Emily's body to accept the new bone marrow. The next few days were the longest of Michael Anderson's life. Emily was sedated, under constant monitoring. Richard was recovering in the room next door, cared for by nurses and receiving frequent visits from his nieces. Daddy, when will Emily wake up? Olivia asked every day. Soon, my princess. Will she wake up for our birthday? The triplets' birthday was in a week, 7 years old. Michael had planned a party, but now everything depended on Emily's recovery. Let's see how she's doing. 3 days after the surgery, Emily finally woke up. Daddy? She called weakly. I'm here, my princess. Did it work? It worked. Uncle Richard saved you. Where is he? In the next room, recovering. Can I see him? Tomorrow, when you're stronger. Olivia and Madison rushed to the room when they heard their sister had woken up. Emily, they shouted together. Hi, sisters. Are you okay? I am. Tired, but okay. Jennifer cried with relief. So did Michael. Over the last few months, they had grown close again, united by their worry for their daughters. A week later, Emily was discharged from the hospital on the triplets' birthday. Michael had cancelled the big party he'd planned and organized something small right there at the hospital. Daddy, where's the party? Madison asked. The party is right here. The important thing is that we're all together. And Uncle Richard too? Of course, he's part of the family now. The celebration was simple but full of love. Emily was still weak but smiled constantly. Richard was there, still recovering but determined to participate. Jennifer had baked a homemade cake, and Michael brought simple but carefully chosen gifts. Dad, can I make a birthday wish? Olivia asked as they sang Happy Birthday. Of course, my princess. I want you and Mommy to get back together. Michael and Jennifer exchanged glances. Over the past few months, they had spent nearly every day together at the hospital. They had talked about the past, their mistakes, and the feelings that still lingered. Olivia, it's complicated, Jennifer said. Why? You like each other, we can tell. It's true, Madison added. You keep sneaking looks at each other. And when you think we're not looking, you hold hands, Emily finished. Michael laughed. His daughters were more observant than he'd realized. So? Olivia pressed. Michael looked at Jennifer. What do you think? I think maybe we can try again. Slowly. Slowly how? Dating. Getting to know each other again. I'll date you again, Michael said, smiling. The girls squealed with joy and threw themselves into their parents' arms. That night, alone in the hospital hallway, Jennifer and Michael talked about the future. Michael, I need to tell you something. What? I never stopped loving you. Even with all the hurt, with everything that happened, I could never take you out of my heart. I love you too, Jennifer. Always have. I just didn't know how to show it anymore. You've changed so much. The girls changed me. They reminded me what really matters in life. And work? Work will always be there. But they'll only be kids once. And your mother? My mother made her choice. I made mine. 2 months later, Emily had fully recovered. The bone marrow had been accepted by her body, and she was playing, running, and being a normal child again. Michael had drastically changed his work routine. He delegated most operational responsibilities to other executives and partners, keeping only the most important strategic decisions. His schedule revolved around the girls. He took them to school in the morning, picked them up in the afternoon, and helped with homework. Daddy, don't you miss working so much? Asked Madison one Sunday afternoon. No? Do you know why? Why? Because now I have a much more important job. What job? Being your father. All three of you. Olivia, who was sitting on his lap, laughed. Being a dad is a job? It's the most important job in the world. More important than being a billionaire, asked Emily. Much more important than being a billionaire. Jennifer watched these interactions with a full heart. The man she had fallen in love with years ago had returned, maybe even better than before, because now he had real purpose. Jennifer, can I ask you something? Said Michael one afternoon when they were alone. Of course. Do you regret hiding the pregnancy from me? Jennifer thought for a long time before answering. I regret not insisting more, believing your mother's threats. But I don't regret protecting them. Protecting them from me. Protecting them from the man you were back then. Michael, you were obsessed with work. You didn't even have time for our marriage. How would you have had time for 3 babies? You're right. If I had told you then, you probably would have paid child support and hired nannies to take care of them while you worked 20 hours a day. And would that have been better than me not knowing they existed? I don't know, maybe not. But at the time I thought I was making the right choice. And now? Now I see you've really changed. That you chose to be their father, not just support them. That night, Michael made an important decision. He called his mother. Mom, I want to make you an offer. If it's about those children, I don't want to hear it. It's about your granddaughters. Your only granddaughters, since Richard doesn't have kids. Michael, Mom, you're going to miss the chance to know 3 amazing girls. Smart, loving, funny. You'll die without knowing your own family. My family is you and Richard. We're not kids anymore, Mom. We have our own families now. Richard doesn't have a family. Yes, he does. My daughters adore him. He's their favorite uncle. And me? You could be their favorite grandma. But you're choosing to be nothing. Mrs. Margaret fell silent. Mom, they know they have a paternal grandmother. They ask about you. Ask what? Why you never visit. Why you don't come to their birthdays. Emily, the one who got sick, asked if you don't like her. The girl who got sick. Emily, your granddaughter, who almost lost her life to a genetic disease she probably inherited from me. What do you mean, inherited from you? Michael told her about the anemia he'd had as a child. But you got better. I did, and so did she, thanks to Richard. Richard donated bone marrow. He did. Saved his niece's life. Mrs. Margaret stayed silent for a long time. I'd like to meet them. Are you sure? I am, but I don't know how. Next Sunday is Children's Day. We're having lunch at home. You can come. Will they accept me? Mom, they're kids. Kids forgive easily as long as we're honest with them. On Children's Day Sunday, Mrs. Margaret arrived at Jennifer's house with 3 wrapped gifts and a lot of nerves. Girls, this is Grandma Margaret, Michael said when she arrived. The 3 of them studied the elegant woman with curiosity. Are you Daddy's grandma? Asked Olivia. I am. Why did you never come to see us? Madison asked, straight to the point. Because I made a very big mistake. What kind of mistake? Asked Emily. I didn't let your dad know you when you were born. Why? Because I thought I knew what was best for everyone. But I was wrong. And now? Olivia asked. Now I want to meet my granddaughters if you'll let me. The 3 girls exchanged glances, holding a silent conference that only Triplets can understand, and reached a conclusion. Okay, said Madison. But you have to promise you won't disappear again. I promise. And you have to learn how to bake a cake, said Emily. Why? Because grandmas bake cakes for their grandkids. Mrs. Margaret laughed for the first time in months. All right, I'll learn how to bake a cake. Lunch was better than anyone had expected. Mrs. Margaret was charmed by her granddaughters' spontaneity, their intelligence and their affection. In turn, the girls were fascinated by the stories their grandmother told about their father when he was a child. Daddy, is it true you fell off a horse when you were little? Asked Olivia. It's true, confirmed Michael, laughing. And did you cry? Asked Emily. Cried a lot, said Mrs. Margaret. He came running home screaming he'd never ride a horse again. And did he? Only when he grew up. Grandma, do you have pictures of Daddy as a kid? Asked Madison. I have plenty. Can you bring them next time? I can. When Mrs. Margaret left that Sunday, she had gained 3 granddaughters and lost much of her rigidity. Michael, they're special, she said before leaving. They are. And Jennifer, she's a good mother. She's the best mother in the world. I'd like to apologize to her. Talk to her. Jennifer, Mrs. Margaret approached her daughter-in-law. I need to ask for your forgiveness. Mrs. Margaret, no, let me speak. I did a lot of wrong things. I threatened you, blackmailed you, tore a family apart, and all out of pride and prejudice. It's in the past. It's not. I stole 6 years of Michael's life with the girls. 6 years that won't come back. But the years ahead can be different. Can I be part of their lives? They're your granddaughters, of course you can. 3 months later, the family's life had settled into a new routine. Michael worked part-time, Jennifer had returned to the school where she taught, and the girls had completely adjusted to their father's constant presence. Mrs. Margaret visited her granddaughters every Sunday and had indeed learned how to bake a cake. Richard had moved to New York City to be closer to the family and was dating one of Jennifer's fellow teachers. Jennifer, Michael said one Saturday afternoon as they sat alone in the backyard while the girls played inside. Yes? I want to ask you something. What? Michael knelt and pulled a small box from his pocket. Will you marry me again? Jennifer was completely surprised. Michael, I know we said we'd take it slow, but it's been 6 months since we got back together, and I'm sure I want to spend the rest of my life with you and the girls. What if you change your mind? What if you become a workaholic again? I won't. You and the girls are my priority now. How can I be sure? Because I sold the company. You did what? I sold my share to the partners. I'm starting a smaller business, one I can manage with fewer hours a day. Michael, have you lost your mind? I've lost it in love for my family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Daddy, why are you kneeling?" asked Olivia, who had appeared at the door. "I'm asking Mommy to marry me." "Again?" asked Madison, who arrived with Emily. "Again." "And has Mommy answered yet?" asked Emily. "Not yet," said Jennifer, looking at her 3 daughters watching the scene expectantly. "Say yes, Mommy," they shouted together. "You want me to marry Daddy?" "Of course. Then we'll be a real family," said Olivia. "We already are a family," said Jennifer. "But married is better," said Madison. "Why?" "Because then you and Daddy won't be able to separate again," said Emily, with the childlike logic that sometimes is the most accurate of all. Jennifer looked at Michael, still kneeling with the box in his hand, and at their 3 daughters watching them hopefully. "All right," she said, smiling. "I accept." Michael stood up and kissed her while the girls celebrated, jumping and shouting with joy. The wedding was set for the following month, a small and intimate ceremony. The triplets were bridesmaids, Richard was the best man, and Mrs. Margaret cried throughout the entire ceremony. "Daddy, now are you and Mommy going to have more kids?" Olivia asked during the reception. "Aren't you 3 enough?" Michael teased. "We are, but it would be cool to have a little brother." "Or a little sister," said Madison. "Or twins," added Emily. "Do you really want more siblings?" Jennifer asked. "Yes." Michael and Jennifer exchanged glances and laughed. "We'll see," said Michael. "First, let's get used to being an official family." 2 years later, Michael and Jennifer did have another child, a boy, born with the same blue eyes as his father and sisters, much to the delight of the triplets, who took turns caring for the baby. "Daddy, is Ethan going to work at your company when he grows up?" Madison asked, watching her little brother. "If he wants to. But first, he'll be a kid, then a teenager, then he'll study and choose what he wants to do with his life. And if he doesn't want to work at the company, then he can do whatever he wants. The important thing is to be happy." "Like you, Daddy?" "Like me what? Are you happy now?" Michael looked around. Jennifer was breastfeeding Ethan on the couch. Emily was on the floor playing with dolls. Madison was reading a book. Olivia was drawing at the living room table. "I'm the happiest man in the world," he said. "Happier than when you were just a billionaire. Much happier." "Why?" "Because now I have you." That night when the girls were asleep, and Ethan too, Michael and Jennifer sat in the backyard to talk. "Do you regret anything?" Jennifer asked. "I regret missing their first 6 years, not seeing their first steps, first words, first days of school. But you're here for everything else." "I am, and I won't miss anything else." "And your new company? How's it going?" "Better than I expected. I work 6 hours a day, make good money, and have time to be a father and a husband." "You found the perfect formula." "I did. Family first, work after." "And your mother?" "My mother is in love with her granddaughters. She comes over every day to help with Ethan and spoil the girls." "Who would have thought? Who would have thought? She was so against having grandchildren. Without good genetics, so now she can't stay away from them." "Kids have that power." "What power?" "To change people. They changed me completely. For the better. For much better." 5 years passed. The triplets were now 12 and Ethan was 3. The family had moved to a bigger house but kept it simple and cozy. Michael had expanded his company but stuck to his principle of working fewer hours to have time for his family. Jennifer had gone back to school and become the director of the school where she worked. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" Emily said one Sunday afternoon. "Of course, Princess." "Have you ever thought about what our lives would be like if you'd never met Mommy at that hotel?" Michael stopped what he was doing and looked at his daughter. Emily was almost a teenager now, but still had those same curious blue eyes from when she was little. "I think about it all the time." "And what would it be like?" "It would be very sad. I'd probably still be overworking, living alone, not knowing I had the most amazing daughters in the world." "And what about us?" "You'd still be amazing, but you'd grow up without a father. Good thing you found Mommy then." "Very good thing." "Daddy." "Yes?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For choosing us." Michael Anderson was moved. Even after all these years, his daughters could still touch him deeply. "Emily, you're the ones who chose me. You're the ones who taught me what's truly important in life." What's important in life? Family, love, being present, not missing the important moments chasing after things that don't really matter. And money doesn't matter? Money matters for security and comfort, but it's not the most important thing. What is the most important? You, your mother, you four, my family. That evening, as the whole family gathered in the living room watching a movie, Michael remembered what his life had been like before that day at the hotel. Empty, without real purpose, focused only on accumulating wealth. Now, even with less money than before, he felt like the richest man in the world, rich in love, in family, in special moments. "What are you thinking about?" asked Jennifer, noticing his thoughtful expression. "I'm thinking that if I could go back in time, I wouldn't change a thing. Nothing. Nothing. Because everything led me here, led me to you, to us. And you're everything I ever wanted. I just didn't know it. Are we your greatest achievement? You're my only achievement that really matters." Ethan stirred in Jennifer's lap and opened his little blue eyes. "Daddy," he called sleepily. "Hi, my prince." "Tell story." "What story do you want?" "The story of how you found Mommy." The triplets immediately perked up. Even though they'd heard it many times, they loved listening to how their parents reunited. "Once upon a time there was a daddy who worked too much and was very sad because he had no family," Michael began. "And then he went to a hotel," continued Olivia. "And saw Mommy hiding behind a pillar," said Madison. "And I ran yelling her daddy," said Emily, laughing. "And everyone looked," said Ethan, even though he hadn't been born yet. "And then," Jennifer teased. "Then Daddy discovered he had the most beautiful daughters in the world," said Michael. "And the most beautiful Mommy too," added Madison. "And then they stayed together forever," finished Emily. "Forever and ever," Michael confirmed, looking at Jennifer. "Forever and ever," she repeated, smiling. Ethan yawned and fell back asleep. The triplets snuggled into their parents, and there they stayed, watching the movie together, a complete and happy family. Outside it began to rain, but inside the house was warm, cozy, and full of love. Michael looked at his family and smiled. It had taken him over 40 years to discover what truly mattered in life, but now that he knew, he'd never lose sight of it again. 6 months later, on a Sunday morning, the triplets burst into their parents' room. "Daddy, Mommy, wake up!" shouted Olivia. "What is it?" asked Jennifer, still drowsy. "There's a surprise for you outside." "What kind of surprise?" asked Michael. "Come see." The whole family went to the living room, still in their pajamas. On the TV, a Sunday morning show was featuring stories of reunited families. "Look, Daddy," said Madison, pointing at the screen. There, a segment was playing about Michael and Jennifer. Someone had discovered their story and made a report about their reunion at the hotel and how they rebuilt their family. "How did they find out about our story?" asked Jennifer. "Must have been someone who was at the hotel that day," said Michael. "Look how cool," said Emily. "Now everyone will know how you found each other." The segment showed family photos, interviews with hotel staff who remembered that day, and even a comment from the doctor who treated Emily during her transplant. "Daddy, now you're famous," said Ethan, who had woken up and joined them. "We're not famous, son. We're just a family lucky enough to have found each other." "Not luck, Daddy," said Olivia. "It was fate." "Fate? Mom always said if something is meant to happen, it happens at the right time." "And you think this was the right time?" "Of course," the four children said together. "Why?" "Because if it had happened sooner, you wouldn't have been ready to be our father," explained Madison, with the wisdom only children possess. "And if it had happened later, it might have been too late," added Emily. Michael and Jennifer exchanged glances. Their children were right. Everything had happened exactly when it was supposed to. 2 weeks later, Michael received an unexpected call. "Michael, it's Karen." "Karen?" He was surprised. He hadn't spoken to his former assistant in years. "I saw the story about you and your family on TV. And I need to tell you something about the time of your divorce." "What about it?" "Your ex-wife. She really tried to reach you about a pregnancy. I know, she told me. But you don't know everything. What do you mean? Your mother paid me to intercept all her attempts to contact you. Every single one. Calls, visits, even letters. Letters? Jennifer wrote you several letters. Your mother made me tear them all up. Do you have any? I kept one. I thought someday you should know the truth. Where are you? Here in New York. Can I bring you the letter? An hour later, Karen was at Michael's house with a yellowed envelope. She handed this to me in person. She was about 4 months pregnant. Said it was urgent you read it. Michael opened the letter with trembling hands. Michael, I know you don't want to talk to me. I know you're focused on the divorce and your business, but I need to tell you something important. I'm pregnant, with triplets. I found out a few weeks ago, and since then I've been trying to find a way to tell you. I know our marriage is over. I know we've gone separate ways, but these children are ours. They deserve to know their father. I'm not trying to save our marriage with this pregnancy. I just think you have the right to know and to decide what role you want in their lives. If you don't want to be involved, I understand. I'll raise them alone, and they'll never know you chose not to meet them. But if you want to be their father, even if we're divorced, we'll find a way to make it work. They'll be born in August. 3 girls. I thought of naming them Olivia, Madison, and Emily. I hope to hear from you. With love, and always will be, Jennifer. Tears streamed down Michael's face. Jennifer had tried harder than he ever knew. She had been honest, direct, and offered exactly what he would have wanted, to be their father, even if they were divorced. Why did you keep this letter? He asked Karen. Because I thought what your mother was doing was wrong, but I needed the job, and she threatened to fire me if I said anything. Thank you for showing me this now. They're beautiful, your daughters. They deserve the father you've become. That night, Michael showed the letter to Jennifer. Do you remember writing this? Jennifer read it and was moved. I do. I wrote it so carefully, with so much hope you'd understand. Can you forgive me? Forgive you for what? For not reading it. For letting my mother control everything. For losing 6 years of our lives. Michael, you didn't know. How could you if you never got the letter? Still, there's nothing to forgive. What matters is we're together now. We are, and nothing will ever separate us again. Nothing. 2 years later, when the triplets turned 14 and Ethan 5, the family received a special visitor, a journalist who wanted to write a book about their story. Why would people care about our story? Jennifer asked. Because it's a story of second chances, of family, of how love always finds a way. And you all agree? Asked the journalist. Michael looked at his family. Jennifer, the triplets, now teenagers, Ethan, even Mrs. Margaret, who was visiting. What do you think? I think it's great, said Olivia. Other people might find inspiration. Me too, added Madison, especially people who've lost their families and want to reconnect. And I think our story could help other workaholic parents understand what's truly important, said Emily. What about you, Ethan? Michael asked. I want everyone to know our dad is the best in the world. Then it's decided, Michael said. You can write our book. The book was released a year later and became a national success. Many families were inspired by Michael and Jennifer's story to try rebuilding their own relationships. Dad, you're a famous author now, Madison teased when the book hit stores. No, sweetheart. I just have a famous family. Is our story really that special? It's special because it's ours. Every family has their own special story. And does ours have a happy ending? Ours doesn't end, Madison. Ours keeps being happy. That night, when everyone was asleep, Michael got up and went to the backyard. He looked at the stars and smiled. 15 years ago, he was a lonely man, obsessed with work, with no real family. Now, he had a wife he loved, 4 wonderful children, a supportive brother, even a mother he'd learned to truly love. All because one ordinary day on a regular Thursday, he decided to attend a meeting at the Plaza Royale Hotel and saw his ex-wife trying to hide behind a pillar with 3 girls who looked just like him. Thank you, he whispered to the stars. "For what?" asked Jennifer, appearing beside him. "For everything. For you, for the girls, for Ethan, for this life." Thanking who? Fate. Life. Whoever decided I deserved a second chance. You always did, Michael. You just needed to learn to prioritize what matters. And I did. You really did. I love you. I love you too. They stood there, holding each other, gazing at the stars and thinking about how life can change completely in a single day, when you find what truly matters. The end. Now tell me what you thought of this heartwarming story. Do you believe Michael made the right choice by choosing family over work? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think about this journey of reconnection and second chances. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other moving stories.